Well, hello everyone. This is Chaplain Tony Repic here at Biddle Air National Guard Base once again with the One Left Attack Wing podcast called The Balance. I'm glad you're tuned in today. Got a great guest again in the realm and reference of mentoring. But before we dive in, again, just real quick overview of what we're doing, why we're doing this here at Biddle Air National Guard Base, and the concept of what the Balance podcast is all about. So we focus on the four domains of comprehensive airman fitness, and something always that one of the guests will bring, whether it's their expertise, their perspective, just something about their background and what they're going to share today fits within one of these four domains, because we're trying to make you and give you resources to be the best you, both in uniform and outside of uniform. So that's really what the aim is. And so today we're going to again talk a little bit about mentoring, and I have Charles Casner in here, A1C. He's one of our public affairs guys, and I just want to give him an opportunity to share his background with us, how long he's been in the military, what he's doing right now outside the military, and anything else that you want to share. Charles, thanks for being here today, man.
Of course. Yeah. So, I mean, growing up, never thought the military would be an option. And then I wanted to go to school to be a nurse. And honestly, I still kind of do. It's changed a little bit, but just school was too expensive. So, long story short, I joined active duty and I did that thing. And then I got the opportunity to meet a couple of the public affairs guys here when I was on leave at Biddle Air National Guard Base, and that's kind of why I was like, you know what, maybe I'll apply for this Palace Chase program, and was able to get out of my active duty contract a little bit early, get ahead of school.
Nice.
Been able to use that GI Bill, and currently I'm going to school for nutrition, so it's a little bit changed. It's still in the healthcare region. I could still be a nurse with it, but
sure.
I just didn't see the point of myself getting a bachelor's degree in nursing. It's nutrition is definitely where I'm headed right now.
That's great, man. Yeah, I didn't realize you were. Mm-hmm. So how many years were you active duty?
I was active duty for a little bit over 2 years.
Okay.
So it wasn't a long time, but it was long enough to kind of get a vibe with the see what National Guard is like versus active duty.
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
And it's very similar but very different at the same time.
Gotcha. Yeah. And so what was your AFSC then on active duty? Because you're here in public affairs, right?
So, yeah, here in public affairs, active duty, it was public affairs-esque. It's same tech school, same everything. I came in as they call it a photojournalist.
Okay.
I definitely was a little bit more photo, a little bit more article writing, a little bit more. I got to necessarily do a little bit more, but it's also because the active duty culture is a little bit different.
Absolutely. Yeah, that makes sense. And so you're really a good individual to talk about mentoring, because we hear this word. We know there's mentor programs out there that the Air Force pushes them. So you have a couple years active, so you could share a little bit of the perspective of what mentoring is on that side. Yeah. Kind of now you're on the the guard side, and you're also going to school. You said full time. So right, and you're pursuing some of these goals you have to be in the medical realm, if you will, nutrition. So let's kick this off here real quick. So. Sure. How important is to you, Charles? How important is mentoring, and what does mentoring mean to you?
I mean, I feel like mentoring could be multiple different things, and it doesn't matter, different stages of life, different walks of life. Every single aspect of one's life, there's an ability to grow. Even when you're at the point where, like, if you ever heard the saying, can't teach an old dog new tricks. Even at that point, yes, you can.
Sure.
I don't know. Like I'm even like teaching my grandparents to, I don't know, work an iPad. Like that's technically mentoring.
Yeah, you're right.
It's like learning from others more experienced in that realm. Mm-hmm. Definitely find myself because military-wise, I'm younger, getting mentored. And then outside, it's more like I do the mentoring. So it's kind of like a weird like shift of dynamics, because I come in here and I get mentored. And I'm able to use that application and kind of use it in the civilian realm.
Yeah, that's cool. I like some of the words you use. I think a couple key words is growth, right? So to be mentored means you're trying to grow in some aspect, in some area of your life, right? Mm-hmm. And I also really like what you hit on, and I think it's true, and sometimes we forget this.
Sure.
It's not so much about age, if you will.
Yeah.
It's about your experience. So you mentioned like you're younger. How old are you?
21.
21. So you're coming here. You are on the younger side, obviously, right? A lot to learn in your craft. In your shop, you probably are the youngest, both in rank and age.
Yep.
Right? Yeah.
Yep.
But yet you're able to take what you've learned and help your grandparents out as a perfect example.
Yeah.
Now your grandparents could be stubborn and be like, don't teach me this, just do it for me, right? And you hear that with people, but the growth mindset doesn't matter. It doesn't look at age. The growth mindset looks at, hey, I want to learn something. I'm going to be humble enough to glean what this experienced individual has so I can utilize it in my own life. And that's kind of what I heard you say, and it's beautiful. So let me ask you this.
Sure.
Did you see this? Was this happening for you in the active duty Air Force?
I would assume so. I honestly had the great experience of having 4 or 5 different supervisors.
Okay.
It was like a rotating door, but have some great ones, have some not so great ones. Ones that, think that they were above being mentored themselves.
Oh, yeah.
And I wasn't doing the mentoring, but it was you have your chain of command and everything. And there's things to be learned in all different levels. And I've had some supervisors where, they wouldn't jump in that ditch with you per se. I feel like a good mentor is one that has empathy, or one that is able to, wouldn't ask you to do something they wouldn't do themselves. Some are sympathetic, and the big differentiator between empathy and sympathy is empathy is getting in the ditch with somebody that can't get out and helping them out. So, and then sympathy is almost looking at them in the ditch and saying oh, that sucks. I'm sorry you're doing that. It's not really I don't know. It's not getting in it with you.
Sure. No, I love that analogy. I think that's huge, and I also I think I heard you say this. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Sure.
But you've had some folks that were your supervisors who were good supervisors, good mentors. Some that weren't themselves willing to grow. Right? Who did you learn more from?
Oh, definitely the great. And here's the tricky thing. I learned from both of them. Yeah. What a good mentor is, what to not do.
Yeah.
And then I found out what a great mentor is and what to do. And it's really just extra mile things, not even doing too much. It's more just caring.
Yeah.
Maybe going the extra step, taking the extra 5 minutes to walk you through something. I know personally in my job, I'm not a very talented writer. Photography is kind of where it's my niche. That's what I like to do. It's what I think that I always bring to the table. But the writing element has always been a struggle. So I would write up a piece, and sometimes I'd have supervisors that just send it back to me all kind of all crossed out in red.
Right.
And it it comes back red, and I know what to fix, but I don't know how to improve for the next time. Gotcha. And then I had supervisors that would be all right, there's a lot wrong here. So here, I'm going to break it down with you, and I'm going to teach you kind of why it's wrong. Yeah. And it only would take them 5 minutes. And, I would grow and learn a little bit. Yeah. And that's something that definitely here has been definitely a forefront. They've been making me do a lot more writing because I struggle with it, which is, I think it's a good thing growth-wise.
Absolutely.
Because photography, I could shoot it in my sleep. That's the easy stuff. It's the writing. It's the harder things to actually grow as a person. Right.
I think you nailed your definition with empathy and sympathy with your personal experience with writing. Sure. Yeah. Someone who's sympathetic will say, well, they're not really good at this. Let me just do it for them. Basically, they're not going to beat you up, but it's just easier, right? But the person that has empathy is going to dive in there and be like, hey, let's look at this. What do you think? And again, to your point, it's just pulling up next to you. Takes probably less time, to be honest, than to go through and redline everything out. Yep. And you get really no feedback from it, or a challenge to approach maybe instead of redlining. Maybe it's hey, what do you think about this wording here? How can you rephrase it? And then give you the ability to correct it right on the spot, right? To me, that's more of what a mentor would do than just do it for you, right? Yeah. And I really think, I love how you said that you've learned from both, because we definitely learn from both. And I had this conversation with someone earlier in the office this week about how I've learned how to be a good leader, and I'm growing. I want to be a better leader every day, right? I've learned a lot more by watching and seeing bad leadership than I actually have good leadership, right? Because you don't really know the difference until you're around someone who is not very good, and you realize wow, this guy that I had was amazing, or this gal that I worked with, she was awesome. Until you have someone who is just what in the world? Yep. You call yourself a leader. You demeaning the people. You don't talk to me. You assume things, and you know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
So
of course.
That attitude, we have to have that attitude. Sometimes it's hard for us in the life we live, because we don't want to. we don't like conflict. We don't like struggle sometimes, but it produces so much more in us, right?
Yeah, I agree.
Than getting handed something very, very polished and good. And you have to see the other side of it. So, man, you have a great attitude for 21-year-old. You have a great attitude for someone that's, again, you know your strengths in your craft, and you know where you're weak. And I think that's another great characteristic of a mentor and a mentee, having that understanding that, you're not great at everything. And where you're not good, you seek people out who are better and who are willing to mentor you. And then ultimately, so I'll ask you this question. You mentioned your grandparents as one of your examples.
Yeah.
What are you doing or thinking about in regard to your own thought processes and maybe practical application of being a mentor for other people?
I mean, thought process is more like what do I have to bring to the table, right? And I think that's definitely a self-reflection type question. And I mean, personal experience going to that college atmosphere. I've been in school for going on 4 or 5 years, and so it was a big culture shock, kind of getting back into it because I'm used to like. Active duty is, they're working you. Like, you're working, 6 days a week on the regular. If you're lucky, you'll get your Saturday off.
Sure.
Sometimes I had good leadership that was like, I'm going to take the bullet for you on this one. I'll let you go skiing this weekend. So, that was sweet. I would love
That's awesome.
But I would like come back to this school culture, and it's like the actual work, like the school is maybe, I don't even know, like 20 hours a week that I'm in class, and like this classwork that's on you. I think it's cake. Like, I don't really enjoy it. I would rather work 65 hours a week, but that's just a personal thing. And then I would have classmates, and I mean they're fresh out of high school, like same age range. They're 18. But there's so much growth to be had once you graduate high school.
Oh yeah.
That I definitely noticed that there's a maturity level difference. And like what seem as big things to them can maybe not necessarily as big for me.
Yeah, right.
And they would go with their school things, and like basically I guess they're disorganized, so they're having like a little bit of like struggles in that regards. And being myself, kind of going through, you have 65 hours and you have to do all these different things. Like the school thing, it comes a little bit easier to me in that regards. So I'll even like say, hey, here, let me help you get organized. I just did this with I guess one of the girls that was sitting next to me. It was like kind of like, she's stressed out, crazy because she's taking a bunch of classes, and so I helped her kind of like get organized a little bit. And in return, I kind of even asked her, because I'm not very good at school, and there's a couple of classes that, especially when it comes to math, nope, not very good at that. Yeah. So I'd be like, hey, I pack your bag, you pack my load.
It's a benefit here to help each other, sure.
So, I mean, I was not necessarily looking for that. I was just kind of giving, keys to the car, per se, in that regards. But everybody has their own different take on it. It's more like giving broad advice.
Yeah. Was she receptive to you as you presented this to her?
So, I believe so. I mean, everything, like, everybody's application is up to them. Like, you can't make anybody do anything.
Yeah, very true.
Going to school to be a dietitian, that's like rule 101. Like, you can't like get necessarily hurt about something that doesn't necessarily want it. But
absolutely.
What you can do, I feel like, as a mentor is kind of offer what you can offer, recommend what you can recommend, but big differentiating factors I guess it's up to them to make that choice.
I'm really glad you said that, because it's like that in my world too, even with counseling and mentoring, right?
I can imagine.
We give advice, or we give something. The individuals have to apply. They either take it and run with it, or they don't.
Right.
But I think a good mentor is willing to still give that advice, be empathetic, and then not get, to your point, you used hurt, right? Not to get all ruffled, your feathers ruffled if they're not applying it. I mean, I have kids, and I see this with my kids sometimes. I'm like, hey, if you just do this, that, and this, it's going to be okay. And they don't do any of it, and they don't get the result that I said they would get. And it's like, Dad can't do it for you, So I love your attitude. You're willing to do it. And I think that's a characteristic that mentors need to have, is that no matter what, the D player on your team to the A player, be willing to mentor and give to everybody. But you know what? Some are still going to be D players. Some are going to be A players. It's the issue isn't so much their application. It's you as a leader and as a mentor to be willing to still provide and give them that information, right? And you mentioned one other thing. You're in a perfect position to help out these young kids, younger, couple of years, because you're a military experience too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
you go in and doing active duty, going through basic training, your tech school. You have so much more discipline and perspective than these kids do. Probably
I think so.
Leaving mom and dad's house and then living on their own like out of nowhere, right? Yeah. So your issues are going to be way different perspective than theirs. So you bring something to the table there for sure.
And I mean, it's pretty cool too. Just this is like a little side note that I'm going to school and like it gets brought up so much about like how you getting school paid for, or like like who's paying for your school, like mom and dad probably don't like that, and just be like sticking in the back,
right?
Yeah, no, we're good on that regards, but I definitely think it's perspective based. It's up to you, and
it's a recruiting opportunity too, right? You share the guard with them, right?
Like a little bit. I typically I let it just like naturally kind of like people figure it out. Mm-hmm. I feel like it has a bigger impact in that regards, especially with recruiting and whatnot, because it's like sometimes like one bad egg ruins the dozen, ruins the batch. So I kind of go into it with the let your actions speak louder than your words. So you're like, why are you like this? Or like, then that's your opportunity to kind of get in there. Don't make it the forefront of, hey, I'm in the Air Force. You
exactly.
You should join the Air Force because we're free school. Right. That's just I guess my take on it.
Sure. No, it's a good approach. It is. You push people away too quickly, right?
Oh yeah.
You kind of when you sit back and you get a kind of a feel for where they are in life, that gives you an opportunity just to find your angle in to speak about it.
Yep.
So, well, look. I mean, as we wrap up again, I really appreciate you sitting down. I think this is going to be valuable to everybody who listens, right? From your perspective, as a younger airman, kind of newer in the career field, obviously newer in the military, but still have a lot of wisdom and knowledge to help. Again, younger folks, your anybody that's willing to learn the knowledge you have and being humble enough to receive that from others. But I'll ask you to maybe to close with this. I'm going to ask a question.
Sure.
What do you expect of your senior leaders when it comes to mentoring and understanding mentoring in the military context? So if a senior leader would tune in right now, they're listening to A1C, Charles Casner right now, who's young in his career. What would you tell that senior leader about your expectations for mentorship?
I guess my expectations would be just, and honestly, I mean, I'm going to use my leadership here as a prime example, because they've been doing it. I didn't even notice that, like, it was because I had never had it before, but just asking, just like how you're doing, it's nothing too big, but it's like it's just like a little, like, you care, like we're human. Because I think definitely military-wise, the human aspect sometimes gets lost in translation.
Sure, yeah.
And, because, like, you're working hard, like, the government doesn't own you, but it kind of owns you a little bit. You signed a contract. You did sign to be here. And to have that leadership that was like, no, you're human. Like, hey, how are you doing? I think it makes me personally, makes people want to work harder, kind of like support the mission. And in return, I think it gets a little bit more blue, per se.
I agree with you. I like that. So, look, if you're a senior leader, you're hearing a young airman here, just be real. Just be human. And naturally, out of just being human, there's going to be a connection. You're going to be willing and vulnerable to talk about your life maybe a little more instead of feeling like there's a rank, oh my gosh, my senior's in here, I've got to sit straight up, you know what I'm saying? And like be stiff and stodgy, if you will. And so that's good. Look, senior leaders, I know some of these things you've heard before, but hearing them in a classroom and actually just getting it from a firsthand perspective, they're two different things, And I'll close with this too. And again, I appreciate what you've come here to share today. Your perspective is that mentoring isn't a program. Yeah. Too often we treat it as like a training program. It's really a way of life. It's how we should be living our lives, right? Mm-hmm. So if there's something you take away today, I think, as Charles mentioned, seek to be more empathetic with your folks than sympathetic if you can. When you dive in the ditch with them, when you're real with them and you're vulnerable at some level, you're going to create more trusting relationships and more of a two-way communicative relationship to where you're going to get more out of both their work and your work's going to be valued more. So again, sounds simple sometimes, sounds easy, but the practicality is a whole different ball game. So Again, Charles, man, I really appreciate you being here
Yeah,
on the
of course.
podcast today. And, again, if you're listening here for the first time, we have other podcasts that are out there, some on mentoring, some on leadership, some on nutrition, health, deployment perspectives, every and anything. And so we're trying to deliver some fresh, good content from our airmen, from some, leaders in certain perspectives that we want to get this information to everyone listening so they can grow again.
Mm-hmm.
We want to see people healthy, not just in uniform, but also in their personal lives. So, again, Charles, thanks for coming today.
Of course.
And again, those of you that are listening, again, I hope you get something out of this. And so me and Charles here, we're out. Have a great day. Take care.
Yeah. I think even too, like the social capital.
Hey, this is Chaplain Tony Repic here. Just want to remind you that this podcast does not imply any endorsement of any commercial organization, product, or belief system.